We begin chapter 4. After Christmas holidays, we see Jerome remembers how the holidays were spent, and he lived with the thought of Elisa and covered my favorite books with notes meant for her eye, and so on. So he was still obsessed with Elisa in his own idealistic manner. Towards the end of December, then Abel and I left for Le Havre, and there Jerome would stay with Aunt Clotilde. Then Aunt Clotilde asks him about how far his relationship or his affair with Elisa went. You haven't told me yet, my dear, whether you were pleased with your stay at Franc-Guzmar. Were you able to advance matters at all? So you see, Aunt Clotilde is also a practical person, and she wants to know what was happening. And Jerome refuses to think of this engagement or this relationship as any kind of, worldly engagement. I had to put up with my aunt's good-natured tactlessness, however painful it might be to hear her speak so summarily of feelings for which the purest and gentlest words would still have seemed too brutal. That is how he imagined his feelings for Elisa to be, that any attempt to describe it in worldly terms would be inadequate. Didn't you say last spring that you thought an engagement would be premature? Yes, I know, one always says that to begin with. She started off again, seizing one of my hands, which she pressed with emotion between both of hers. Besides, on account of your studies and your military service, you won't be able to marry for several years, I know. So she says that she is against a long engagement. It is cruel for the girls. But sometimes engagement is also a satisfactory way of indicating to others that one is already booked. You will tell me what to think. She says that Juliet has a suitor, and she asks Jerome what he thinks of him. I am afraid, Aunt Felicie, that it is labor lost on his part, and that Juliet has someone else in her mind. Now, Jerome wants to indicate that Juliet has Abel in her mind, and therefore any attempt to build or have a relationship or an engagement with another person would be futile. So this information was not only wrong but misguiding also for the aunt. Whom? Said Aunt Felicie inquiringly, and putting her head on one side with an incredulous look. You surprise me. Why should she not have told me anything about it? So Aunt Felicie does not believe him. I bit my lips to prevent myself from saying anything more. Oh well, we shall soon see. Juliet has not been very well lately, but we are not speaking of her for the moment. Elisa is very charming too. Come now. Did you or did you not make your declaration? Now the use of the word declaration appears to be very profane to Jerome. Although rebelling with my whole heart against the word declaration, which seemed to me so inappropriate and crude, I was incapable of replying by a falsehood to this direct question. I answered yes in some confusion and felt my face flame as I did so. And what did she say? I bent my head. I should have liked not to answer. In still greater confusion, and as though in spite of myself, I said, she refused to be engaged. Well, the child was quite right, said my aunt. You have plenty of time before you, heaven knows. That is, before you can be engaged to her or think of marrying her, there is still plenty of time. So Alisa is still a child, and she is right not if she is not ready for marriage or engagement right now. Oh aunt, that's enough now, I said. Besides, I am not surprised. I always thought your cousin more sensible than you, the aunt says. That is, Alisa was more sensible than Jerome. No aunt, no, you didn't understand. So Jerome was emotionally extremely desperate at this point, exasperated by this cross-examination, for it seemed to me that on a sudden my heart burst. Like a child, I buried my face in my kind aunt's lap and cried out, sobbing, "No, aunt, no, you don't understand. She didn't ask me to wait." "What, did she refuse you?" said she, in a tone of the kindest commiseration, raising my head with her hand. "No, no, not exactly." "Are you afraid she doesn't love you any longer?" "Oh no, I am not afraid of that." "My poor boy, if you want me to understand, you must explain a little more clearly." So obviously the aunt, who is, pragmatic and does not understand these subtleties and nuances, she cannot understand if Alisa did not refuse him, did not stop loving him, then what he is complaining about. I was ashamed and vexed to have given way to my emotion. My aunt was doubtless incapable of understanding the reasons of my uncertainty, but if some special motive lay behind Alisa's refusal, Aunt Felicie, by questioning her gently, might perhaps help me to discover it. So, Jerome's confusion about Alisa's motive, that is the main issue here. He doesn't understand Alisa, why Alisa is postponing the engagement. And he has faith that aunt will be able to find it out or extract it from Alisa. But ironically, when the aunt speaks to Alisa, then also nothing is revealed, because Alisa says things which are very convincing to her. She says that she is more concerned about Juliet. She wants Juliet to marry first or something like that. And she is also concerned about her father, who is not keeping well. Therefore, the aunt sees that this was a very rational decision on her part not to be engaged immediately. So the aunt also could not probe or fathom Alisa's mind. Now we cannot blame her, because Gide has introduced something very extraordinary in Alisa. Alisa is not only extraordinary because she keeps refusing Jerome. She is extraordinary because the way she thinks about love and religion and appears to be in contradiction, suffering from contradiction. She believes that her religion asks her to not embroil Jerome and let Jerome be a saint. On the contrary, her love propels her to have Jerome, to desire Jerome. Therefore, we may say Alisa is a rare character in literature. A character who is torn apart by the demands of religion and love. Or we may say, the way religion clouds her mind, that she cannot see properly through the ideology of religion, and is forced to deprive herself as well as Jerome because of this misunderstanding or lack of clarity. So when aunt speaks to Alisa, After that, she tells Jerome, "Great silly," cried my aunt when I saw her. "It is really inexcusable to make yourself so unhappy for nothing. There is not a single word of sense in anything you said to me yesterday." "Oh, I didn't beat about the bush. I sent Miss Ashburton away as she was tiring herself out helping us. And as soon as I was alone with Eliza, I asked her straight out why she hadn't accepted you last summer. Do you suppose she minded? She was not embarrassed for a single moment and answered quite calmly that she didn't want to marry before her sister. If you had asked her frankly, she would have said the same thing to you. A fine thing to make such a fuss about, isn't it? You see, my dear, there is nothing like frankness. Poor Eliza. She spoke to me about her father too, whom she can't leave. Oh, we had a long talk, dear child. She is very sensible. She told me she was not perfectly sure yet that she was the right person for you, that she was afraid she was too old, and thought that somebody of Julia's age. So here also we see that the aunt does not understand Eliza. And Eliza does not say it plainly, but she insinuates that Juliet would be more appropriate for Jerome. So the aunt does not understand that Eliza is ready to make a sacrifice for her sister Juliet, where apparently they are rivals for Jerome's life. So the case of Eliza is more complicated because there are two different stages in her development. So, or we may say in the story of her rejection of Jerome, or we cannot perhaps even use the word rejection because she loves Jerome. So we may say that there are two stages in the story in her relationship with Jerome. At the initial stage, she does not want to have an engagement with him because she wanted to make a sacrifice for her sister Juliet, who also loved Jerome. But that motive does not remain when Juliet gets married. And then we see the full influence of religion on her mind, and as she becomes more and more a fanatic or a bigot and refuses to have anything to do with sexual pleasure, we see that she deprives herself as well as Jerome. So these are two different stages, but in both the stages the outcome is that she does not have an official engagement with Jerome. Therefore here we see that her principal objection in getting engaged to Jerome is that her sister also loves him, therefore she won't stand in her way, in the way of her happiness. But even though she indicates that or hints at this, many people do not understand her. Like Jerome does not understand her, the aunt does not understand her. So what would we say? Would we say that Eliza is a very deep character who cannot be easily understood by other characters? Well, perhaps she is a deep character. But perhaps Jerome is equally hard-headed, we may say, does not understand or cannot follow the various shades of emotions in Eliza or her motives at different points. But we actually cannot call Jerome hard-headed either, because Jerome appears to behave like an immature boy. So he was an immature boy as well as an idealist. Therefore he thought that idealism and romanticism in love, they are of prior significance, than sexual fulfillment or other things. Then Jerome meets Abel, and he is very excited as usual about Juliet. My dear fellow, I can tell you already that the conversation I had with Juliet this morning almost settled it, though we talked of hardly anything but you. But she seemed tired, nervous. I was afraid of agitating her by going too far or of overexciting her if I stayed too long. But after what you tell me, I hesitate no longer. I snatch up my hat, dear boy, my stick, and I am off. Come with me as far as the Dupulas to hang on to my coat tails, for fear I should fly away on the road. I feel lighter than euphorian, and Juliet knows that it is only because of her that her sister has refused you. When I make my offer on the spot, ah, my boy, I can see my father this evening beside the Christmas tree, praising the Lord and weeping with joy. So Abel is fully confident that Juliet would accept him, and particularly if she comes to know that Alicia is refusing Jerome because of her, then she would immediately accept him. Now, even though here Abel says that that he spoke a lot to Juliet, but she spoke mostly of you. So Juliet spoke mostly about Jerome, yet Abel fails to understand that Juliet was obsessed with Jerome, that Juliet loved Jerome. So he thinks that Juliet will accept him immediately, and his father will be very happy. So we see that Abel does not understand Juliet. Okay, so we see here that two boys do not understand two girls. Jerome does not understand Alicia, Abel does not understand Juliet. Even though Abel claims to be more confident in matters of love or in matters with the other sex than Jerome, yet we see that he is also completely lost when it comes to Juliet. He completely fails to understand her or her motive, and therefore later he will suffer from some anguish. But of course he is not as serious a boy as Jerome. Therefore he will be able to cope with it. Then we have here the symbolism of amethyst cross introduced. As soon as I got into the hall, I caught sight of Alicia. She seemed to be waiting for me and came towards me at once. She was wearing round her neck, in the opening of her bodice, a little old amethyst cross, which I had given her in memory of my mother, but which I had never seen her wear before. Her features were drawn, and the look of suffering on her face smote my heart. This amethyst cross stands for Alicia's love for Jerome and Alicia's acceptance of Jerome. So here she wears it. Later she uses this cross as a symbol or as a sign to indicate whether Jerome should stay back or leave. So she told him that if you see me wearing the cross, then you stay back. If you see that I am not wearing the cross, then you leave. And after her death, this cross is returned to Jerome. So the amethyst cross is a symbolism of unfulfilled love. So, first it stands for Elisa's love and acceptance of Jerome. Secondly, it stands for this love not being fulfilled. So the look of suffering on her face is because she knows that Juliet loves Jerome, but though there are offers for marriage from Edward or other people, and there is also Abel, another suitor for Juliet, yet Jerome does not show any indication of returning her love. But that is why she is unhappy. Why are you so late? She said rapidly and breathlessly. I wanted to speak to you. I lost my way on the cliffs. But you are ill. Oh, Elisa, what is the matter? So, what does Elisa urgently want to tell Jerome? Jerome deliberately spent a lot of time walking on the hills, and so he was late to the party. He was probably avoiding, meeting Elisa, whatever reason. And now here we see that Elisa was looking for him. She wanted to convey some important message to him. This message she cannot convey it here. Other people come and then they have to, leave. So later we understand that she wanted to tell him that Edward Tessier was very persuasive and perseverant in Juliet's love, but Juliet does not love him. Therefore, Jerome should do something so that Juliet's life is not destroyed. But Elisa could not manage to tell this to Jerome. She put her hand on my neck as though to pull my face towards her. I saw she wanted to speak, but at that moment some guests came in. Disheartened, she let her hand drop. It is too late, she murmured. Then, seeing my eyes fill with tears, she added in reply to my inquiring look, as though such a derisory explanation could suffice to tranquilize me. No, don't be alarmed. I have only a headache. The children make such a noise. So, Jerome's eyes filled with tears. Why? Because Jerome was being tantalized by the thought whether Elisa would accept his proposal or reject it. And she thought that Elisa was unhappy, and it was probably an indication that she would reject him totally. There was this party going on, there were a lot of people, and Jerome and Elisa didn't have another opportunity of speaking. And then Juliet comes rushing to Jerome and asked him whether Elisa spoke to him. Because Juliet expected that Elisa would tell him that Juliet loved him and that she did not want to marry Edward. The pity is that Juliet could not tell it herself to Jerome, who was oblivious of her love because of modesty. Jerome thought, looking at Juliet, that Abel must have committed something wrong. What had happened? I wished I could see Abel. What had he said? What had he done? Returning to the hall, I made my way to the conservatory where Juliet was waiting for me. Her face was flaming. Her frowning brows gave her look an expression of hardness and pain. Her eyes shone as if she were feverish. Even her voice was harsh and tense. A sort of fury inspired her. Notwithstanding my anxiety, I was astonished, embarrassed almost by her beauty. We were alone. So if only Jerome could progress a little more, instead of being embarrassed or astonished by her beauty, if he could appreciate her beauty and have fallen in love with her. But his thoughts were not in that way. Has Elisa spoken to you? She asked at once. Barely 2 words. I came in very late. You know she wants me to marry before she does? Yes. She looks at me fixedly. So even then, Jerome does not understand that Juliet loves him and Elisa wanted to sacrifice her love for Jerome for this reason. And do you know whom she wants me to marry? I didn't answer. You, she went on with a cry. Why, it's madness. Yes, isn't it? So here is the most pathetic and cruel part. That Jerome, by saying that it is madness, crushes any hope that Juliet might have had that he would love her. So Juliet had to accept this verdict that Jerome looks upon loving her as a madness. Yes, isn't it? There was both despair and triumph in her voice. She straightened herself, or rather flung herself backwards. Now I know what there remains for me to do, she added indistinctly as she opened the door of the garden, which she slammed violently behind her. Therefore, it was in this party that the fate of Juliet was going to be decided. Whether Juliet would accept Edward Tessier or not. And there were these three possible suitors, Edward Tessier, Abel Vauthier, and Jerome himself, without knowing it, was the most prime candidate. But Jerome was completely oblivious that Juliet loved him. Therefore, this was a crushing rejection of Juliet. And Juliet in desperation said that now I know what I have to do. By this, probably she meant that in a kind of a revenge on Jerome, in a volte-face, she would yield to Edward Tessier, the person whom she did not love. And later we see that Edward Tessier holds her hands in the party as if they are about to dance or something, and then she falls unconscious. Because of the pressure of this tension and anxiety, this nervousness, all these mental, all these emotions, these very violent and contradictory emotions in her, she falls sick and she becomes unconscious, falls to the ground. And Abel and Edward and others, they all take him to her bed and her father calls for a doctor. So this was also the Christmas Eve. The children had finished their hymn, there was a silence, and Pastor Vauthier, standing up in front of the tree, began a sort of sermon. Abel was standing beside the door. He had no doubt been there some time. He was looking at me in a hostile manner, and when our eyes met, he shrugged his shoulders. So at this point, it is not explained why Abel felt hostile to Jerome. Later we know that by this time he has come to know that Juliet loved only Jerome. And he couldn't believe that Jerome did not know it. So he felt hostile to him, that he never discouraged him or never told him anything, that he never gave him any hint that there was any affair between him and Juliet. I went towards him. Fool, he said in a whisper, and then abruptly, oh, let's go out, I am fed up with preaching. And as soon as we were outside, you fool, he said again, as I looked at him anxiously, without speaking. Why, it is you she loves, you fool. Couldn't you have told me? I was aghast. I tried not to understand. No, of course not. You couldn't even see it for yourself. He had seized me by the arm and was shaking me furiously. He was very angry because he was rejected by Juliet. and rejected because of Jerome. Because Juliet loved Jerome, that is why she rejected Abel. So Abel was very angry with Jerome, but here was Jerome completely innocent of the entire thing. His voice between his clenched teeth hissed and trembled. Abel, I implore you, I said after a moment's silence, and in a voice which trembled too, while he strode along at random, dragging me with him. Instead of being so angry, try to tell me what has happened. I know nothing. He stopped suddenly and scrutinized my face by the dim light of a street lamp. Then drawing me quickly to him, he put his head upon my shoulder and murmured with a sob, Forgive me, I am an idiot too, and I didn't understand any better than you, my poor brother. So Abel realizes that Jerome did not understand Juliet's love, and he weeps here. He is sad because he has been rejected, and he says that he also didn't understand Juliet's mind, that Juliet did not love him. So what do we make of this? Do we generalize that women's love is very deep, that boys often find it difficult to understand or interpret? Jerome by nature was naive, but Abel, who was more worldly wise and more confident about the way he can have his way with women, even Abel made this mistake. Therefore, one can say perhaps that Juliet could suppress or conceal her love for Jerome very well. So only that was clear, that became clear only when Abel pressed her too much, or when Edward Tessier pressed her too much in accepting his hand. So only at a crisis point that Juliet would make it clear that she loved another person. What happened? What is the use of going over it again? I had talked to Juliet in the morning, as I told you. She was extraordinarily beautiful and animated. I thought it was because of me, but it was simply because we were talking of you. So now Abel realizes that Juliet was always talking of Jerome, and she was very animated, excited because she was thinking of Jerome. Didn't you realize it at the time? No, not exactly, but now the smallest detail becomes clear. Are you sure you are not making a mistake? A mistake? My dear fellow, you must be blind not to see that she is in love with you. Then Alisa is sacrificing herself. She had found out her sister's secret and wanted to give you up to her. Really, old boy, it is not very difficult to understand. Then Jerome asks him if Abel saw Juliet again. Yes, after Alisa had gone, I pushed open the door of the room. Juliet was there motionless, standing in front of the chimney piece, her elbow on the marble, her chin in her hands. She was staring at herself in the glass. When she heard me, she didn't turn round, but stamped her foot, crying, "Oh, leave me alone." So she was very impatient and she didn't want to see Abel. So Abel could realize that he was rejected. So harshly, "Oh, leave me alone," so harshly that I went away again without asking for more. And now, "Oh, talking to you has done me good. And now, well, you had better try and cure Juliet of her love. For either I don't know Alisa, or else she won't have you before you do." That is, Abel says that since Alisa has made up her mind that she would sacrifice for Juliet, therefore Jerome, if you do not cure Juliet of her love by reciprocating her love, Alisa will also not accept it. And then we have this incident of Juliet falling sick Abel and Jerome, they are together, and they see this thing that Juliet was yielding to Edward. Then he saw, "Stop," said Abel, seizing me by the arm. Then he saw the stranger draw near Juliet and take the hand which she abandoned to him without resistance, without giving him a glance. That is, she did not love Edward, but she gave her hand to him because she wanted to kind of, take revenge on herself, perhaps, or on Jerome, for this unfulfilled love with Jerome. By giving herself away to a person she didn't love. "Oh, Abel, what is happening?" I whispered, as if I did not understand yet, or hoped I did not understand aright. "By Jove, the young one is going on better," he said in a hissing voice, because Abel is still very angry with Juliet. So said, the young one is going on better, going on better than Alyssa. That is, she also did not reciprocate Abel's love, and she is, on the contrary, giving herself away to a person she did not love. She does not want to be outdone by her sister. The angels are applauding in heaven, and no mistake. That is, her sister Alyssa is also making a sacrifice, and she does not yield to Jerome. So both the sisters, in their love, they do not reciprocate. That is what Abel suggests. My uncle went up to embrace Juliet, whom Miss Ashburton and my aunt were pressing round. Pastor Vautier drew near. I took a step forward. Alyssa caught sight of me, ran up to me in a quiver of emotion. "Oh, Jerome, it must not be. She does not love him. Why, she told me so only this very morning. Try to prevent it, Jerome. Oh, what will become of her?" She hung upon my shoulder with desperate entreaty. I would have given my life to lessen her anguish. But how would he lessen Alyssa's anguish? Alyssa wanted him to do something. That is, only if he reciprocated Juliet's love. Only then this thing could be set aright. Suddenly there came a cry from near the tree, a confused stir. We rushed up. Juliet had fallen unconscious into my aunt's arms. They were all crowding round, hanging over her so that I could hardly see her. Her face, which had turned frightfully pale, looked as though it were being dragged backwards by the weight of her loosened hair. It seemed, from the convulsive movements of her body, that this was no ordinary pain. "No, no," said my aunt aloud, in order to reassure Uncle Nicolas, who was getting agitated, and whom Pastor Vautier was already consoling with his forefinger pointed heavenwards. So, when Juliet was being taken into the room to a bed, then Abel was holding her head, and Jerome saw that Abel kissed the loosened hair of her head. Abel held up her head, which would have fallen backwards, and I saw him bend down and cover with kisses her floating hair as he gathered it together. This is the pathetic end to this unreciprocated love of Abel, and a pathetic end to Juliet also, whose love is also unreciprocated. Therefore, we have in this chapter the rejection of Juliet, the rejection of Abel, and if we compare the two rejections, then we see that they are not exactly identical. Jerome rejects Juliet unknowingly when he says that it is maddening, it is a mad thought. He does not know that Juliet loves him, but it has a crushing effect on Juliet. But when Juliet rejects Abel, she rejects knowingly. And why does she reject him? Not because she hates Abel, but because she loves Jerome. She loves another person. These two cases can still be formulated, But the case of Elisa not entering into a formal engagement with Jerome, which is some kind of a rejection. It is not totally rejection because we know, the author makes it clear, that both the characters love each other. But it is a rejection of making this love official, or it is a denial of leading this love to any fulfillment. It also stands for deprivation of fulfillment, sexual happiness, pleasure, and all that. So after that, in the next chapter, we will see that the series of letters will begin. As Jerome would be traveling, he would leave, and there is already this distance between him and Elisa, and that the fact that they can speak to each other only via correspondence, that indicates that there is this distance between them. But nevertheless, there is still a dialogue between them. So as long as there is a dialogue between them, we know that there is still some kind of an understanding, a reciprocal acceptance of each other. But then a point comes when this letter writing stops, and that indicates a turn for the worse. And we will see that that would indicate Elisa becoming very unnatural, very different. The influence of religion, the influence or the reason of her own personal frustration in life, various things will be compounded to make her lead a very cloistered, lonely life. She will even leave, her house at Fungus Marsh. She will go away alone and will have a tragic course of life. Jerome will again meet her, but we will see that she would be a different person. I seem to have no other reason for living than my love, and to that I clung, expecting nothing, and with my mind made up to expect nothing, but what should come to me from Elisa. So this indicates Jerome's continued dedication to Elisa, and that is another, surprising exposition of this constancy in love, which we usually in life we see that constancy in love is sometimes hampered by lack of opportunities. So circumstances change so much that a particular affair, a particular love relationship cannot be sustained. But in this case we see that even though there is no, fulfillment, no satisfaction, no physical pleasure, yet Jerome's constancy for Elisa does not change. And this fact will be established toward the end of the novel, after Elisa's death, when Jerome goes to meet Juliet. By that time Juliet is a mother of a number of children, in the household of Edward Tessier, the married woman. And so when he goes to meet her, then she asks him whether he was still constant in his love for Alice, and he replies in the affirmative. Therefore, we may say that this constancy is, it has been exposed in this novel, it has been asserted in this novel. We may say that it is an idealistic value, constancy in love. But sometimes some ideals influence us in our real lives. So whatever is idealistic is not unrealistic by definition. But people have both idealism and acceptance of reality. And when Jerome affirms that he was still in love with Elisa, then Juliet doesn't say anything, but there is an indication that Juliet's love for Jerome also did not disappear. So that emotion was also there. Therefore, Reed brings to light some aspect of love which is often overlooked. That love can continue or can survive the onslaught of circumstances. Even though love may not be materialized in marriage or living together, even then love does not die sometimes. Therefore, one would say that this makes this novel unique, because less known aspect of love, less known aspect of our reality, of our inner life has been exposed here. And readers may or may not accept whatever has been exposed here. Some readers would find it to be true. Others who are more of practical type, they would find it to be impossible. People who are by nature very idealistic and want to remain truthful to their passions, they would accept it as true. Sometimes the first flame, the first love, that never extinguishes. Even though people move on and have other partners, but that love lingers. The next morning, Jerome gets a letter from Elisa. Juliet's extreme restlessness did not yield to the doctor's prescription till towards morning. I begged Jerome not to come and see us for some days. Juliet might recognize his footsteps or his voice, and she is in need of the greatest quiet. I am afraid Juliet's condition will keep me here. If I do not manage to see Jerome before he leaves, please tell him, dear aunt, that I will write to him. So this is a letter that Elisa wrote to the aunt, and Jerome is shown this letter. And in this letter, Elisa requests that Jerome should not come to their place, because Juliet needs to forget him, or at least not being stirred or triggered by his presence. The Bucola's door was shut only against me. My aunt or anyone else that chose was free to knock at it. And indeed my aunt was going there that very morning. I might make a noise, but if you will excuse, no matter. So Jerome said that, okay, I won't go. But he felt very bad. At any rate, I determined I would see Abel. At his door, the maid gave me a note. So when he could not go to Fongusmar, he wanted to go and see Abel to discuss with him the situation. But he was also not there. And Abel wrote this note. I am leaving you this word or two so that you may not be anxious. The idea of staying at Low Havre, so near Juliet, was intolerable. I embarked for Southampton last night, almost directly after I left you. So that very night Abel left for England. I shall spend the rest of the holidays with S in London. We shall meet again at the school. All human help failed me at one and the same time. I did not prolong a stay which could only prove painful to me, and went back to Paris before the beginning of the term. So their stay at Low Havre had become vitiated by the turn of events. Both Abel and Jerome were not wanted there anymore. So Abel left for England and Jerome left for Paris, that is where his school was, before the term begins. It was to God that I turned my looks, to him from whom cometh down all true consolation and every good gift. It was to him that I offered my trouble. I thought that Eliza too was taking refuge in him, and the thought that she was praying encouraged and exalted my prayers. So both Eliza and Jerome, they were turning to religion, they were turning to God because of this situation. There went by a long period of meditation and study with no other events but Eliza's letter to me and mine to her. I have kept all her letters. By their help I can from this time onwards check my recollections when they become confused. So this suggests that Jerome looked back at the letters, Eliza's letters from time to time, and he preserved those letters so that he can understand, or he can keep in touch with the past, how the emotions unfolded and what happened, so many changes that happened. So it is a complex history of the changing emotions. But the fact that Jerome preserves Eliza's letters and goes back to her letters again and again suggests that his obsession with Eliza, or his love for Eliza, that never faltered. And but Jerome does not get everything from Eliza's letters, because Eliza does not write to him everything that she felt. She never wrote to him about her desire, her personal, desire for pleasure, for sexuality. Those things she wrote in her journals, and therefore when later after her death Jerome acquires the journals, then together with her letters the journals provide some kind of a complete story of Eliza's life. So I will stop here. Do you have any question?